I'm Marcus Greatheart. I'm a family doctor and social worker working in addictions and street medicine. In this episode of the Field Guide Live, we're talking about how frontline workers can hold clear boundaries without turning those boundaries into punishment, how our own nervous systems affect difficult encounters, and how we can keep doing this work without losing ourselves. Let's get into it. Well, hello everybody. Marcus Greatheart here. Excited to spend a bit of time with folks to talk a bit about, it's in reverse, Field Guide Live. This is the Field Guide to Frontline Care, my new book that just came out last, 12 days ago. And excited to share it with folks. Response has already been positive, and so happy to be able to spend some time chatting about the book. Maybe there's folks joining who have already read the book. So looking forward to hearing some people's thoughts. You know, this book has been such a pleasure to work on since last fall, when I realized that there was a real shift with the conversations that I was having with folks on socials, which has just been a real delight. Just hearing folks talk about their experiences in frontline care, the challenges, the joys, the grief, the complexity, all of that really resonates with me. As many of you know, I'm a social worker and a family doctor, and so I'm always leaning into those sort of dual roles. I refer to those as, my superpower, or the Venn diagram of that is what is like my unicorn horn. So I started creating more content around the frontline care experience. So I'm a family doctor who I do an addictions clinic in our local community. I do street outreach, so street medicine to our unsheltered homeless community. And I work at the hospital as well, doing addictions consult, which I'm doing this week. And I have a real passion for the conversations that I have with frontline workers who, particularly when we're on outreach, or also the frontline workers, at the hospital, the emergency room nurses and the unit clerks and the occupational therapists and social workers. I find that as we are working with some of our clients, we're not just having discussion about the care that we're providing and the support that's needed and what's going on for someone, but then oftentimes we're able to take a few moments to sort of step back and just talk about the work, particularly when things are going on, whether it's, there's some new kind of enforcement from the city, or if somebody's passed away. Those types of things going on give us the opportunity to talk more about the experience of doing frontline care. And those conversations I find incredibly rewarding, and I learn a whole lot of it. And so I started making more content based on a lot of those conversations. And it just occurred to me that I could take that and put it into a resource that would be helpful to have on the shift. So this isn't like a how-to. This is about what do you do when you've had like a rough shift, or something went completely sideways, or the interaction you had with a client was challenging in a way you hadn't anticipated, or you're just feeling kind of down at the end of your shift and you're like sitting in your car going. So there's not answers in here, it's context. This work that we do, frontline care, whether we're doing harm reduction, or supporting people experiencing homelessness, or rough sleepers, or on a mental health team, or working in the Emerge. Like, this is a resource to turn to when things haven't gone the way that was expected, and you feel like you need to sort of find a way through it. So it's there to provide some context. Yeah, so that the drive home can be a bit better. Or you're on your break and you pull it out of your backpack during your while you're eating your lunch, and hopefully find some renewed perspective to go back out and engage with that client who's just been so challenging to work with. And sometimes you're just digging real deep to find your compassion for somebody, and you want to. So my hope is that that's part of what this book can be used for. Again, if you've had a chance to read it, I would love to hear your thoughts on how it's been useful. I think that Frontline Care doing this work involves a lot of skill, and that skill can be learned and practiced. So I do think it is, like many other skilled jobs, where we can continue to learn and grow through education and communication with our teams and with others. And so that's part of what I hope to be able to offer, is to share content and have conversations that help people's practice of frontline work expand and grow, and that people feel a bit more competent, if people feel a bit more capable, a little less singed at the edges. I think a key lesson that I've taken from this work is that oftentimes some of the behavior that we see in our clients in Frontline Care, and not just the challenging behavior, sometimes the curious behavior or the unexpected behavior, is a demonstration of what it means to be living in a state of threat and survival, with diminished power and impaired capacity, because of the extremeness of sort of survival experience that many of our clients and patients work with. And by understanding that has been key for me to not take it personally. If somebody lashes out or yells or what have you, in the moment that can be a lot of feelings. I guess me remembering that this is this person living in this extreme, often chaotic situation and trying to survive it. And so sometimes they might act out in a particular way that is difficult or hard or loud or angry. And so I'm just trying to find a way to not take it personally. As providers, workers in frontline care, I know, based on conversations that I have, that a lot of people really care deeply about the work that we do and the people we do that work with and for. And I believe it's possible to hold good boundaries in doing that work and stay human, like hold on to our humanity while working in very difficult systems, whether it's healthcare or social welfare or whatever system you might be operating in. social, criminal justice, incarceration spaces. It is possible to do those things to take care of ourselves while we take care of others. And so happy to be able to talk more about that. This book is, when I was putting together the book, originally I sort of took all of the ideas from all the content that I had made and thought, well, just shove this all into a book. And then I realized that I needed to sort through it. So from my perspective, this is where I put the content, the learnings that I feel more confident about, the things that I've learned and developed over my years of being a social worker and a doctor. And in the years that I've been doing frontline care. So this is the stuff that I feel pretty confident about. I'm open to being challenged about it, absolutely. So I have some confidence in this. The social media is an opportunity for me to put ideas out there and get feedback on it. So, I've been having conversations about, I've been posted a few videos around things like anger, when our clients are angry. And I've had some pushback about that. To appreciate a nuanced component of that is, yes, we should be able to hold more capacity for people's anger, but also a lot of people have experienced violence and abuse, meaning workers, and oftentimes without support of institutions, and that can make it difficult to have latitude for our clients' anger, because the tripwire for us worrying that it could escalate into something like maybe something that happened before is just so much more sensitive. So I appreciate, for example, those conversations, learning more about the care that we provide. So let's dive into the book. Let's share a little bit. The other place where I've started putting some of the ideas that I'm playing with is in my it's a newsletter. It's my twice a month email called Notes on Staying Human, and it's a place for me to have some email communication with folks. So if that's something that you're interested in doing, I can't promise that I can respond to every email, but I respond to a lot of the emails that I get. So I sort of talk about a topic kind of like I do on socials, and then there's usually a question, and then oftentimes folks are responding back to it, so we're able to have a little bit of back and forth conversation. I see your question there, Andrea, and I'm going to hold on to that. Let's do this, and then I'll come back and we can talk a bit more about the book and get to questions as well. So this is chapter 9. Chapter 9 is Holding Boundaries Without Punishment. How to set limits that protect people without becoming the enforcement arm of a broken system. Frontline workers are constantly holding limits. Who can stay, what behavior we can allow, and what services we can provide. We believe limits matter. That's not the issue. The issue is that the limits we're asked to enforce are often applied in ways that feel punitive, arbitrary, or disconnected from care. We end up stuck in the middle, required to enforce policies we didn't create, blamed for consequences we can't control, treated as the system's face even though we have no power to change it. This chapter is about how to hold limits without becoming another source of harm. sort of the introduction to this chapter. Boundaries and punishments are not the same thing. A boundary is a limit on what we can offer or allow, while punishment is a response meant to teach a lesson or enforce compliance. For example, I can't let you stay tonight if there's violence is a boundary. You're banned for a week so you'll learn to control yourself. That's a punishment. Systems blur these concepts when they add shame to consequences, apply rules inconsistently to make a point, or frame loss of services as motivation instead of necessity. The people we work with feel the difference immediately. What boundaries are actually for. Boundaries exist to protect safety, ours and the people around us. They protect our capacity to keep doing the work. They create clarity about what we can actually offer. They are not there to correct character or to force insight. If we're thinking, maybe this consequence will make them change, the boundary has shifted from protection to punishment. And then just skipping ahead a little bit, what holding boundaries without punishment looks like. We name the limit early, before frustration builds. We repeat it calmly and consistently without escalating our tone. We don't lecture, explain why the rule exists, or frame it as a moral issue. We don't warn of consequences out of frustration. And it sounds like this. I can't let you stay here if there's violence. You're welcome back tomorrow. I can't give you more medication today. I'll happily reassess you next visit. I can't keep engaging if voices are raised. We can try again later. The boundary is clear. The relationship is intact. The medication one is one that comes up almost weekly in my practice, in my addictions clinic, when I have folks come in who have a known very high opioid tolerance, but there are limitations on what I'm permitted to prescribe, and appropriately so. There's some wiggle room with some medications and not with others. Methadone, for example, doesn't have a lot of wiggle room because there's a risk with giving too much methadone too fast, even if somebody has a historical tolerance to it, that you could cause potential harm. And so when I have folks come in and say, they need a restart, and I'm restarting them at 40 milligrams, and they're like, well, I was on 180. I'm like, I just can't start you back at 180 if you haven't had it in 2 months. So it's challenging. So these types of conversations and limit settings I'm having very frequently. That one in particular has been on my mind over the last few weeks. Andrea J. Something we're navigating as a team right now is racist slurs being used against our racialized team members. Oof. I'd be curious to hear what approach you and your team are taking to do that. Yeah, Andrea, what approach is your team taking to address those racialized slurs? For me, I think it goes back to boundary setting with clients. I think part of what we recognize is that a lot of the same stereotypes, bigotry, racism that we have grown up in and around has also grown up, our clients have also grown up and around that. So how do we offer guidance to folks without punishing them, or at least giving folks the opportunity to learn and grow from those interactions, that we don't automatically dismiss someone for the words that they say. Again, thinking about the fact that there's always context, a survival context for many of our folks, and setting boundaries about what is okay and what's not okay. Saying we're starting to work on building allyship and how not to be a bystander. How do we support each other when we're out there? The impact is very real and hard on those staff. Yeah, absolutely. I've talked about this before. One of the challenges of being part of a marginalized or minoritized group is also the fact that members of that group, when they speak up, are often heard to be the shrill, is the language that I use. For example, when I speak up about, queer, LGBTQ plus issues, I have in the past had the experience where I thought, like, people were basically saying, oh, there's Marcus talking about the gay stuff again. And it's hard sometimes for folks to hear that when they have that bias, right? The whole reason that the issue's being raised. So this idea of having allyship where others can step in, so others from who are members of the dominant part of that equation. So a non-queer person stepping up and saying, actually, that's totally not cool, what you've done. There is power in that. So similarly, if somebody makes a misogynistic comment, like having a man step up to talk about it, having a non-racialized person step up to address a racist stereotype can be incredibly powerful, and also a way for that to be heard and to set some normalizing around different thinking. I think that works in all domains of life. And oftentimes part of our frontline work is doing teaching and education that folks might not have heard or had when they were growing up and developing. So I'm glad you're doing that. Helen, I gave a copy of your book to a manager who runs the healthcare side of a harm reduction organization. He immediately said he would pass it on to someone, but paused to flip through it. He read a page and then the next, and then said, actually, maybe we'll go through it as a team at our meetings. This is really practical. Oh my gosh, I love that. Helen, is it okay if I share that story with folks? Because I think people really want to sort of understand how the book can be useful in that way. All right, I'm going to move into another section of the book then. So this is chapter 12. You are part of the environment. How our own nervous system shapes outcomes more than policies do. Most of us are trained to focus on the person in front of us. We see their behavior, we take note of their choices, we anticipate how they may be at risk. We learn if and how they reply to requests and suggestions. Much less attention is paid to the fact that we are also part of the environment that they are responding to. Not our intentions, but our state. They respond to how we speak with them and our own body language. People regulate off each other. Humans constantly read each other for cues of safety or danger, whether consciously or subconsciously. Tone, pace, posture, facial expression, distance. When the person in front of us is overwhelmed, exhausted, or afraid, they can be especially sensitive to these cues. They respond to our state before processing our words. That's why two workers can handle the same situation very differently, even with the same policy and the same language. Our own identity matters too. Race, gender, sexuality, disability, class background, age, and whether we share lived experience with the people we serve, all of these shape how we are read, trusted, or resisted. For some of us, this means carrying unearned authority. For others, it means carrying extra scrutiny or risk. Neither is neutral, and both require awareness. This was chapter 12. The content for this section, some of that came to me. I'm thinking back to a case that I had where I went out on outreach, and we had a death in our among our unsheltered homeless community members. In this moment, I can't actually remember exactly which of our clients that was, but in this work, there are folks who get under your heartstrings, and this was a death that really just sort of caught me, and I heard about it at our morning briefing, and then we went out, and I found myself talking with one of our regular folks, and I felt my irritation growing on the inside. And I was realizing that I really had to almost control my words. And so I had this internal experience where I'm engaging with this client and also very aware of myself just getting more and more irritable. And I thought, I need to check in about this. So I was able to sort of recognize and say, I just need to put these feelings on pause and just sort of finish this interaction with this person, which I was able to do. And then I took one of our nurses aside and I said, can we just go for a walk for a moment? I think she thought I needed to chat about a client, but I was like, I'm not doing okay. That news about the person who passed is really affecting me. And I'm worried that I'm gonna bark at somebody because it's making me very irritable. And so I ended up stepping away, ended up taking a break, and not finishing my outreach that day. I think one of maybe 2 or 3 times where I started outreach and stopped. Because sometimes the feels get to you. It's just an example to say, to recognize that we are part of that interaction, and what's going on for us, the feelings can have a significant impact on how the interaction goes. And as I write about, oftentimes how our state of mind, our state of being, is read by the person we're working with far quicker and in advance of any words that come out of our mouth. And I think oftentimes the folks that we work with can be hypersensitive to that because they're used to needing to be on high alert for their safety. So I think you can be very attuned to how we're doing. Yeah, and even just talking about that, just related to that on the topic of grief, that's turning into a good chunk. Grief is turning into a good chunk of the content that is in the follow-up book to this one, which is currently called The Field Guide to Staying Human, which is a resource for frontline workers on how do we take care of ourselves. It's not a book on burnout. It is like, how do we keep doing this work in a good way? But it's focused on us and our experience, where this is about the work we're doing with the clients that we're working with. Thanks, I wasn't expecting to share that story today, but I'm glad that I could. Wendy. Daisy is Wendy, and you're a social worker as well. Andrew, you're putting part of the book into your orientation material. I would love to hear more about that. Please message me and tell me all about that. That's very exciting. Connecting with the people we work with, the ones who get it, is so important. It's a heavy load to carry alone, and most people in our lives can't understand. It's true. I mean, I remember being in, when I was in med school and residency, and having conversations with my husband and the people around me. Even the people who are so close to me, them sort of wanting to sort of get it, but unless you're doing, unless you're training to be a doctor, you don't really know that experience. And I think there's a very similar experience in frontline care, that unless you're doing this work and you're at the front line and you're seeing it, it's really hard to explain to someone else. Folks outside of this work can infer what that is, but unless you're doing it, it's not really common understanding. Oh, it's Helena. Thanks. When is my second book coming available? So it is, that'll be in the new year. I learned a lot in getting this one published, that everything moves much more slowly. So the very rough draft of it is written, and now I'm doing my edit through. My goal is to get it for a first edit to the editor next month. And then that gives us a few months of back and forth with it, so that the manuscript is done by the end of the year. And then it goes to our wonderful designer, Asia, who did the inside of the book for layout and stuff, and then we work on the cover and all that other stuff. So yeah, probably in the new year. I am, for those who follow me, I'll be sharing very soon, once I have details. I'm doing an event on October 31st for Overdose Awareness Day with the Nova Scotia, let me get the name. The Nova Scotia Grief Alliance is hosting a virtual event on Overdose Awareness Day, and I think it's at 2 p.m. Pacific time, is my recollection. I'll clarify that, and I'll post the information on. It's going to be a free virtual event for Overdose Awareness Day, talking about grief and frontline workers. So second book, doctors can be higher on the healthcare hierarchy, usually. Indeed, and that can be a challenge, but I'm working on it. I'm very fortunate to do the work that I do, particularly in addictions and street medicine, that I meet lots of amazing doctors who get it. I also talk to doctors who don't get it all the time, and others who are like trying to learn and grow. Madeline. So the challenge with teaching in schools is academia. And to be fair, my contact, one of my contacts is one of my closest friends is a PhD researcher in academia. And when I see what she has to go through with her teaching and research and all of that, I thought I might do an MD PhD, and when I see all of that, I'm like, yeah, it makes that context undesirable. I will say I took a social work in health course back when I was in social work school, and I don't feel like it really prepared me very well for working in healthcare. That was many years ago. I feel like nowadays, there are so many practical things I could have been taught about how healthcare operates and how to navigate through that. And I've talked a bit about some of that on social media around, for example, like understanding the DSM criteria for a substance use disorder. As a social worker or a nurse or any healthcare provider, you can collect some of that information and share that with with the physician or nurse practitioner who might be doing diagnostic work. But that's not the guidance that we had. It was more theoretical, and I think there's so many practical things. So I kind of often imagined I would teach that course, but I might do. Our hospital social worker gave me, said to me, maybe a cohort virtual group for social workers or frontline workers, something like that. So I might do something like that. How are we doing? What else did I want to chat about? So part of what this book and the new book, the sister book, it's non-identical twin. One of the threads that goes through that is how do we keep doing this difficult frontline work without hardening or disengaging or losing ourselves? And I think that's something for each of us to to hold on to. How do we hold on to the thread of this? Our humanity, how do we stay human in it? And hold on to our compassion and hold on to our empathy and show up with grace for our clients and our colleagues and for ourselves, because days aren't going to go perfectly. Things will go sideways. So I think that's an important thread to, as I said, that goes through the books and through all of my work, is thinking how do we do that? How do we keep being able to show up in our best possible selves? And I think that part of that goes to the last section, the last chapter of the book is called Good Enough Care, right? Sometimes we need to do what's good enough, because the factors are never perfect, meaning how we're able to show up on a given day, how our client is able to, the resources that are available, and usually the mismatch of those resources to what a client is actually wanting. So sometimes we need to figure out what is good enough for this moment, or for today, or for this plan that we're working on. Our family homeless shelter staff in Everett, Washington will be doing a book study at the end of September. Right now we're planning the pacing part of it. Super. Well, any last questions before we finish up for today? I want to hear more about my journey to MSWMD. That could not be easy. Sorry, there's another. How did I? There's a bit of harm reduction going both ways. Yeah, absolutely. Journey. So I was a social worker first. So I did community health education, particularly in 2S LGBTQ plus communities, and then HIV/AIDS work for 15 years, starting when I was in my early 20s. And that evolved into social work school, which I loved. And while I was doing my MSW, my practicum was at one of our local hospitals in the downtown east side of Vancouver, and worked with a wonderful social worker there in their HIV clinic, and the head of social work said to me, when you're done, let me know you've got a job. I'll find a job for you somewhere in the social work team. And that's not what I expected to do, but when I went looking for a job at the end of grad school, the pickings were slim, and social workers don't get paid very well. So the hospital job paid the best, and it had vacation time, and it was unionized, and there was a little bit of a pension thing. And I'm like, well, for somebody that's been in school for quite a while, that's kind of appealing. And I did enjoy working in the hospital. It's just when I was doing it, I hadn't anticipated doing more of it. I thought, well, I can do this for a while and help pay off school, what have you. And ended up getting a job, the vacation coverage social worker. So I floated around and did a bunch of different jobs. And I worked in geriatric medicine, really enjoyed that. And so when one of the social workers there retired, I stepped into her line, and I did that for more than a year. And while I was there, I met a geriatrician who had been a physiotherapist before she went to McMaster Medical School. And she said to me one day, McMaster looks for the kind of people who would make good doctors. You should think about it. And so I did, and I applied. And I went to medical school, which was incredibly challenging. I didn't have a science degree to get in. It wasn't required. I didn't have to study and do the entire MCAT. I just had to do the verbal reasoning section at the time, which I did without studying, and got enough of a score. And somehow that all came together and I got in. I killed it on the interview. Like they do multiple mini interviews there. on topics completely unrelated to like the science of medicine, but related to like relationships and communication and all of that. And I'm very good at that stuff. So of course, when I went in for the interview to do that, I'm pretty sure I did very well. So, med school was very difficult because I didn't have that science degree. I needed it on the first day. I repeated my first year of medical school again, just because it's a whole new vocabulary. You know, I didn't know what an allele was, the components of a cell. Like, those are things that I just didn't know. And so I made the difficult decision to repeat my first year. And that was just the right thing for me to be able to get back, to get into the rhythm of it. And that worked out really well. I got my first choice residency placement. And that's where I met. I had some mentors in med school who were awesome, like great cheerleaders for me. One of whom has become a great friend. And, but going back to Vancouver and back to training in one of the hospitals where I'd been a social worker was a really great experience. And then, met some great doctors who really demonstrated for me what being this kind of a doctor can be, taking care of some of our most marginalized folks. And the passion that they had for it really like rubbed off on me. And so that's what I do now. That's a bit about my journey. Master Medical School is great. If you go to my website at greatheart.ca, you'll see there's a click button. It'll take you to kit.com sign up, and there's like a 3 email sequence that just sort of talks about what the newsletter is about, and sort of gets you started. You're in there every other Tuesday, and the next one comes out this Tuesday, so you get that. Yeah. So, hey everybody, thanks. This has been fun. Nice, because I got a chance to do this a couple of weeks ago, and I feel like I've gotten a bit of the rhythm for doing it live. Where am I going to be? I wanted to make sure that I shared that as well. And I'm just going to my website because that's where I posted a bunch of things. Upcoming events. So the free virtual event with the Nova Scotia Hospice Palliative Care Association, their sort of grief group, that is noon Pacific, 3 Eastern time. Keep watching that just to make sure. I'm pretty sure that that's correct, but we were just this past week working out the details of that. So there'll be an official invite coming out soon, and I'll make sure that I'll put a link for that event on my website, and I'll also share it on socials. End of September, if anybody's going to be in Halifax, I'm going to be at the Street Medicine Conference there. If you haven't been to the Street Medicine Conference and you're thinking about it, it is awesome. They are such lovely, lovely human beings. I was in Toronto, and I was in somewhere in the States. What was that? Kansas. I was in Kansas, and just had a really great experience meeting the folks there at the conference. So, and I'm presenting at that conference from some material related to the book, a workshop called Language That Lowers the Temperature, Practical De-Escalation for Street Medicine Encounters. So I'll be there. If you're going to be there, come say hi. I'm going to be at the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness Conference in Winnipeg. I'm not presenting, but I'm going to be there. Again, would love to meet folks. I'm doing a keynote for the Thunder Bay Harm Reduction Conference on November the 10th, which is in person and virtual, I'm told. That one, I'm assuming, will not be free, but people can register for it. It's the Monday evening. They actually have a fellow a comedian with experience of substance use, and talks about being a cocaine addict is the language that he uses. So he's doing sort of a comedy night the night before on the 9th, and then I'm doing a keynote on the 10th. So again, once I have the registration information, I will add it here. I checked this past week and it wasn't up yet. And then I'll be at the Canadian Society for Addiction Medicine conference in Calgary also in November. So November's going to be a busy month. So if folks are going to be at any of those events, please let me know and we can get together and chat. What else did I want to... So books available through Amazon, and you can also order it. Bookstores are not going to stock this book because it's quite niche, but bookstores can order it. It's available through a distributor called Ingram, and so they can. So you can go to any bookstore. I know some folks don't love Amazon. So you can go to any bookstore and they can order it, and as well as online. So I checked a couple of other online booksellers, and you're able to order it through them. If you're part of a team that is interested in bulk orders, there's also you can email me through my website. There's a button there, but you can send me a note. I can send information out about bulk orders. Newsletter we've talked about, events we've talked about. Yeah. To reiterate, frontline work involves skills we can learn and practice. We can understand behavior differently, hold boundaries without punishment, and care deeply, and still find ways to stay human while doing this work. I think that's the part that I want to underline. I appreciate all the questions and discussion. There's a little bit more. Feel free to message me or leave your comments. If you've had a chance to read the book, I would be grateful for your feedback, a review. I'm very grateful to the folks who trusted me enough through knowing me or through my content to go ahead and buy a copy sort of without knowing very much about it. So I'm super grateful for that. I expect there's lots of people out there for whom the book is, they might want some reassurance that, that the book would be useful. And so, sharing a post or writing a review can help somebody to find the book and make the decision to use it. So if you're feeling so moved to do that, if you just want to send me your feedback, I'm gonna post a carousel with some of the feedback that's been there so far. So yeah, help get the word out. Let's do this again sometime. This is fun. I wish you all a wonderful Sunday. Thanks. I appreciate you all very much for spending a bit of time with me. It's been great. Bye, everybody.